talking about the 5 love languages, and we're the book by Gary Chapman, easy read, and he psychologist, author, speaker, who talks about the different ways we speak the language of love. He talks about the importance of love. He says our most basic emotional need is not to fall in love, but to be genuinely loved by another, to know a love that grows out of reason and choice, not instinct. I need, he says, to be loved by someone who chooses to love me, who sees in me something worth loving. He goes on to say that kind of love requires effort and discipline. It is the choice to expend energy in an effort to benefit the other person, knowing that if his or her life is enriched by your effort, you too will find a sense of satisfaction, the satisfaction of having genuinely loved another. And in the book, he talks about the love language we speak and the love language we understand, and that doesn't always match up. I might understand the love language of words. I might not be good at speaking it. And if we can dial in which the purpose of the book, the love language I speak and understand, then both partners in a relationship can feel loved. He goes on to talk about the fact that love is not an obsession. He writes, it does not require the euphoria of the in-love experience. In fact, he says, true love cannot begin until the in-love experience has run its course. We cannot take credit for the kind and generous things we do while under the influence of the obsession, which he says lasts at most a couple of years. Love is important. Love is not an obsession. Biblically, love is a verb. It says, 1 Corinthians 13, very familiar passage, love is patient, love is kind. And notice, love is something that you do. It's not necessarily something that you feel. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love is a verb, and it is able to be expressed and understood by words and time, by gifts, which we'll talk about briefly this morning, by service, and by touch. When we think of gifts, the first thing we think of is presence. A gift, Chapman writes, is something you can hold in your hand and say, look, he was thinking of me, or she remembered me. You must be thinking of someone to give them a gift. The gift is a symbol of that thought. Gifts come in all sizes, colors, and shapes. Some are expensive, others are free. To the individual whose primary love language is receiving gifts, the cost of the gift will matter little unless it's greatly out of line with what you can afford. That might be a little bit questionable. Gift giving, Chapman writes, is one of the easiest love languages to learn. It's a language every culture understands, and in his research, he's an anthropologist and a counselor. He found every culture. Gift giving is part of the love and marriage process. Somebody would say, but gift costs money. And there's a problem with that. Each of us has a perception of the purpose of money. We have various emotions associated with spending money. Some of us have a spending orientation, and we feel good about ourselves when spending money. Others of us have a saving and investing perspective. We feel good about ourselves when we are saving money and investing it wisely. Chapman writes, interestingly, if you are a spender, you will have little difficulty purchasing gifts for your spouse. But if you are a saver, you will experience emotional resistance to the idea of spending money as an expression of love. You don't purchase things for yourself. Why should you purchase things for your spouse? But he goes on and says that, but that attitude fails to recognize that you are purchasing things for yourself. By saving and investing money, you are purchasing self-worth and emotional security. You are caring for your own emotional needs in the way you handle money. What you are not doing is meeting the emotional needs of your spouse. And there's different ways to express love through giving. There's the giving of presents, buying things that do not need to be expensive. One husband wasn't a very good present giver. He went to the Chapman's seminar, and he learned that his wife's language was the language of gifts. And so he decided, you know what, I'm going to give this a whirl. And he bought her a gift one week, and then he says, I'm going to continue this. And he was able to continue it for 3 years. It wasn't an expensive gift. Sometimes he would pick a flower. He sometimes would buy Cracker Jacks for the kids. Tonight he brought a pizza home, take a break from cooking. But she recognized that he was thinking about her. And it made a huge difference in the relationship. Then the Chapman talked to this guy. He's the author. And he said, and this guy's name is Jim, but what about you, Jim? Do you feel loved by Janice, who was his mate? Oh, I've always felt loved by her, Dr. Chapman. She is the best housekeeper in the world. She is an excellent cook. She keeps my clothes washed and ironed. She is wonderful about doing things for the children. I know she loves me, he smiled, and said, now you know what my love language is, don't you? As was acts of service. We understand love in different ways. It can be from presence, and it also can be from presence. A husband once said, when my mother died, my wife's, and it's from the book, my wife's supervisor said that she could be off 2 hours for the funeral, but she needed to be back in the office for the afternoon. My wife told him that she felt her husband needed her support that day and she would have to be away the entire day. The supervisor replied, if you are gone all day, you may well lose your job. I've said, my husband is more important than my job. He spent the day with me. Somehow that day I felt more loved by her than ever before. I've never forgotten what she did. Incidentally, he said, she didn't lose her job. The supervisor soon left and she was asked to take his job. That writes, if the physical presence of your spouse is important to you, I urge you to verbalize that to your spouse. Don't expect him to read your mind. If, on the other hand, your spouse says to you, I really want you to be there with me tonight, tomorrow, this afternoon, take this request seriously. Gifts can be expressed through presence you give and presence being with the person. When we consider gifts and how they express themselves this way and how they express themselves this way, we come to a juncture when we're thinking of gifts where vertical and horizontal gift diverge. What it says. James writes, "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him." When tempted, no one should say, "God is tempting me." For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when by his own desire. It says evil desire in the NIV, but the word evil is not found. The problem is not evil desire. The problem is desires. That's what James points out. We want what we want when we want it. When we are tempted, we have to experience the absence of things we want, and we have to learn how to not get what we want, to hold on to our tension. Not getting what we want creates tension, and we have to learn to hold on to the tension and hold on to God's hand at the same time. Not to eliminate the tension, but to be able to endure it. What we'll see that when we walk through this life, especially as children of God, we will not get what pleases us long term. God is thinking of eternity with respect to his children, and we have eternal, really wishes. It was C.S. Lewis that says, "Sometimes I wonder if I've ever really wanted heaven." Then he said, at other times, "I wonder if in our heart of hearts we have ever really wanted anything else." Everything we experienced in this world is a glimmer, a glimpse of something that we'll experience then. He goes on, he talks about God will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. When tempted, he says, no one should say, God is tempting me, because God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when, by his own desire, he is dragged away and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers. Every good and perfect gift is from above. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Again, every good and perfect gift comes from above, and ultimately the gift that God will bestow, I don't know exactly what this means, the crown of life that God will give to those who have loved him. One thing I do know about the crown of life, whatever it is like, whatever it will be, an eternal gift. And that's the thing when we find God is every good and perfect gift comes from above, and when God gives gifts, his orientation is a gift that will last forever. And sometimes gifts that last a temporary period of time get in the way of gifts that last eternally. Sometimes an eternal gift will not give us what we want in the present, but it will give us what we want eternally. Sometimes a temporary gift gives us what we need now, but it doesn't benefit us relative to eternity. On this side of eternity, it seems to suggest for children of God, even though God is a really good gift giver, on this side of eternity, individuals who walk with God will have to deal with frustrated desires. And that's not because God is withholding every good and perfect gift. It seems that in the interest of eternal spiritual development, that we will need to experience temporal frustrated desires. This is what Jesus experienced, and we're just going to just read this through. It's when Jesus was tempted. What happened? He was baptized, came up out of the water, and God said, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." And the love of God the Father for God the Son was evident. And then what it says immediately, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, with those words ringing in his ear, how much the Father loved the Son. He found himself being driven into an isolated place without food, to which he had to just spend 40 days, and God didn't tell him, well, at the end of 40 days you'll get fed. He just went to a place and experienced hunger because it was the place that God led him to. And Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Jesus was experiencing hunger. Hunger is not a bad thing. But what he was offered, an Old Testament promise that, well, God turned the stone into bread. And Jesus did not assume that God's purpose was to remove his physical hunger. So he just held on to the hunger. He didn't assume that, because hunger is not a pleasant thing, but he hung on to it. It went on. Then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Not only did he experience physical need, but emotional need. If he goes up and throws himself off and then God catches him, he has the emotional awareness that God is with him, but he does not do away with the physical need. He doesn't do away with the emotional need. And it goes on. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you bow down and worship me." And now the devil's offering him something, he says, of the world. Jesus said, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and angels came and attended him. Temptation meant Jesus endured temporary suffering in order to be able to experience eternal glory. I want you to think of what good is. What good is. I want you to think about good and have a piece of paper in your mind. Write good on the left, bad on the right. Okay? Under the good heading. What's good? Think about it. We have things that are good. Things that meet our need, loving. Okay, now, the bad side, right? What's bad? There's things that we could think of that are uncomfortable. Now, biblically, it seems to suggest that, well, what does it say? To those who love God, he causes all things to work together for good, to those called according to his purpose. And what it suggests that being a child of God means that we're going to experience difficult things, uncomfortable things. God will not meet our needs. He'll allow us to live with frustrated desires. And again, we won't like that. We'll be tempted to call it bad. Curious thing, every good and perfect gift comes from above. It seems then, if you're a child of God, there's things that are uncomfortable, but we can't really call them bad, can we? You know what that suggests? On this piece of paper, we need to take this column, we need to select it, press delete, move the cursor over to the good side, and paste. Good things cause eternal purposes to be fulfilled, but things that feel bad do as well. well, that's just about Jesus. And what it says, because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Apparently, temptation is something that we need as well. I've got a question. What do you need when you're experiencing need? When there's things in your life that you would call bad, we all call them bad, but things that are uncomfortable. When you are, well, you're experiencing it now, aren't you? Health challenges, financial challenges, relational challenge. What do you need? It says, because Jesus experienced things, he is able to help. What do we need from him? You know, the thing that's curious about when we're going through struggles is how isolated we feel. You ever recognize that? That when you don't have what you want, how alone you feel? Can you tap into that? You know, one thing we need when we are struggling, Brian will experience it, Brian Matthews. He'll have people go by and having people stop by, and we'll have, in fact, we have a card back there by the coffee, and so when we get root beer floats at the end, you can scrawl your name in it. Bring that to him, and you know what he'll experience? You won't be with him in the room, but the fact that you thought about him and signed your name, and he'll read that card, and you know what will happen to him? Will it help his pain? Medicine helps his pain. What will it do for him? You know what it'll do? It'll make him feel less alone. You know what Jesus can do for us? What Jesus would say to you in terms of enduring frustration? I know exactly what that means. I know exactly what that feels like. So what Jesus can help us to do, we have to touch the things that feel uncomfortable. They do. But we can touch his hand at the same time because he understands that. And when we do this, it allows us to endure difficult things, not to eliminate them, because the fact is, if we walk with him, there's going to be tough things. And what he offers us is the opportunity to walk through those things. We don't have to walk through it alone. But that's a big thing, isn't it? That's a big thing. He's able to help those who are tempted. Temptation feels painful, but it isn't bad. The training that leads to usefulness involves enduring unpleasant circumstances. Here's what James says a little bit earlier in the passage before he talks about every good and perfect gift comes from God. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work, that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Well, that is kind of a big statement. Here's what it says in that verse. Perseverance is under remaining. So what perseverance means, you're in a situation you would change if you could, but you can't. That's what perseverance is. A situation you'd change if you could, but you can't. And you need to learn, how do I stay in this circumstance where I have this thing that I don't want when I don't have this thing what I do want? And that's what a situation like that is. And what this suggests, the experience of needing to persevere, of having to endure something you would change if you could, but you can't, that is the way that God crafts usefulness. Perseverance must finish its work in order that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. With respect to usefulness, the tool God uses to create usefulness in his children is he puts them in a circumstance where they have to learn to connect with the difficulty and connect with Jesus at the same time, so that we can come alongside others who feel alone, help them connect not only with us, but with him. It goes on to say, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. When it talks about doubting isn't, it really is judging. That's really what it is. It's the word for separating something. We're back to our list, okay? Good and bad. It's when we look at God and we see, okay, you've given me these good things and you've given me these bad things. And so now I ask that you would take the bad. Do you understand the problem there? It's thinking that God can be the author of bad, but every good and perfect gift comes from above, and that's to judge. Is God capable of giving you something bad? And it suggests God can't be solicited to evil. He doesn't tempt anyone. Each one is tempted one by his own. So what do we need to do? We don't need to be hypocrites and try to pretend we like it. Please, sir, give me another. But what it does mean, we hold on to the tension and we're honest about it. And we'll hold on to his hand at the same time in order to have him help us, give us what we need to endure the temptation. It says no discipline seems pleasant at the time, and this word for discipline, we've talked about this before. There's a difference between discipline and punishment. And it's really significant. Let's think about the focus and the motive of discipline and punishment. Let's think about focus. What's the focus of punishment? On something that we did wrong, right? Somebody does something wrong, and punishment, the focus of punishment is on what was done wrong in the past. What's the focus of discipline? Future correct behavior. That's properly administered. Discipline is not about the past, it's about the future. So there's different focus and there's different motive. What's the motive of punishment? It's justice. What's the motive of discipline? It's love. Very different things. And it talks about discipline we experience. No discipline seems pleasant but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who are trained by it. How do we survive? We've been reviewing. I'm going to have you bring it up. We're not going to read the whole thing, but I want to call your attention to it. I'll read part of it. There's a sheet in your worship folder. It has 4 points at the top. It says growing a heart of love. Growing a heart of love. We love because he first loved us. So relative to whatever language we speak, it's touch, gifts, words, whatever, God is the one who loves really well, and we love because he first loved us. And to experience his love, I'm going to point out a couple things. Number one, we have to look at ourselves. This is the hardest thing. It's looking at ourselves, because if we look at ourselves, here's what James says we're going to see. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires? What that word literally is pleasures. Don't they come from your pleasures that live within you? You want something but don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. Or do you think Scripture says without reason that the Spirit he caused to live in us envies intensely? You know what the problem is with getting gifts in this world? They wear out. And the joy that they give us dissipates. That's what James suggests. If we live for pleasure and our pleasures are at war, we live at war with ourselves. We want to continually be pleased. And what this suggests to us, this side of eternity, we can't continually be pleased. It's just not possible because our desires and our pleasures go this way. If this pleasure is gratified, this is frustrated. Then that's what it seems to suggest. When we look at ourselves, then, what we see inside is craving and contempt and conflict. Craving. We want what we want. If I don't get what I want, and I've told you before, the hardest thing I do is dealing with me when me doesn't get what me wants. When me doesn't get what me wants, I hold somebody to blame. Some of us are apt to blame ourselves. Well, of course I don't have what I want. Look at me. Look what I struggle with. Or some of us don't look at ourselves. We look at other people, but we place blame either on ourselves or on someone else. If you are living with frustrated desires, is there someone to blame? We could focus on blame, or you know what we could do? We could look at ourselves and say, you know what the fact is? Craving, contempt, and conflict. It's kind of a cycle. Craving. We don't get it. We get contemptuous, angry, and it creates conflict. Craving, contempt, conflict. Craving, contempt, conflict. Craving, it's like a whirlpool, isn't it? The more time it goes and the faster it goes, the harder it is to get out. What do we do with this? It talks about, begin with looking at you and what he says about you. I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more, by the way. In your attitudes, and you might be angry, you might have done something. God is not thinking and remembering things you did wrong and dealing with your frustrations. What he says, and you can tell him, even though you might have blown up that person or did whatever. The truth is, because of the new covenant, that God's still in you, and God's still with you, and good's still ahead of you, guaranteed. This is step one. If you're going to go through difficult things, don't go alone, and the one that you can have go with you is God. Even if you say, but I have an anger problem, because he's not looking at your anger problem. Well, you got to see what I did to that person. I flipped them off. And what God will say to you, I'm still in you. And I'm still with you. God's still ahead of you, guaranteed. This is, look at ourselves. We're craving, attempting conflict, but he's still with us. Okay? You look at me, we have a high priest who does not sympathize, who sympathizes with our weakness. You know what Jesus says to you? I see your frustration. You know what Jesus understood? Agitation. When we don't get what we want, we feel agitated. Does Jesus understand what it feels like to be agitated? Yes. Yes. And divided, he said, let this cup pass from me, your will be done. He experienced agitation. He looks at you. You know what he says? I see you. I see you. And I sympathize with you and I deal gently with you. Here's what the Father says. The Father speaks. When I think of you, look at me, I think of Jesus looking. And speaking, I think of the Father. What he says is, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. These verses, if you could memorize these and think about them and think that God is saying this to you, I think it really is helpful. That's why I'm going to keep on including these. I'm not forcing it, but they're very helpful. Because it's, well, what does he say to you? Be still. And I want you to think about what frustrates you. What frustrates you? It's him, it's her, you don't get gifts. It might be a number of things. Number one, be still. What to be still means, don't change your feelings. Don't try to push your feeling away and be happier than you are. Don't. And don't change the facts that created the feeling. Don't try to think about changing him yet. Don't change her yet. Stop. Pause. What God would say, and know that I am God. I will be exalted. I'm never going to leave you and forsake you. That means I'm never going to cast you adrift or leave you behind. So, here's what God would say to you. Be still. Don't change your feelings or the facts that created them. Know that I am God. I'm going to be exalted in the nations and on the earth. I win in the end. And everything gets good. I will never, on this side of eternity. I will never leave you. I will never cast you adrift or lead you behind. So, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. He'll be there when you need him. And thinking about that now is what he wants us to do. And then we speak to him about what we want. I look at me. You look at me. You speak, and I speak to you. Why would we do this? So we can touch our difficulties, touch God's hand. We can be loved, and we can express this love to others. Let's stand for closing. Father, thank you for your promises and for Jesus and his sympathy. Father, for your sovereignty and how you would have us walk through difficulties with you. And as we learn to do that, it causes us to be useful. I think of somebody like Brian, who now has to struggle with the things associated with an accident and all the things that make that confusing. And thank you that you're with him, and I pray that he would experience it. Thanks for the root beer floats we get now. In Jesus' name, amen.